The thunder of hooves echoed through the red canyon as a stagecoach raced along the dusty trail, carrying 21-year-old Penelope Fletcher toward a future she both feared and desperately needed. Her gloved fingers clutched the worn letter in her lap, her only lifeline in the vast, unforgiving territory of Montana in 1885. The coach hit another rut, sending her bonnet askew and bringing a muttered curse from the driver above. Penelope closed her eyes, silently repeating the English pronunciations she'd practiced for weeks aboard the ship from Ireland. The memory of her father's dying words propelled her forward. "America, Penny, find a new life there. Whoa there." The driver's shout jolted Penelope from her thoughts as the coach lurched to a stop. Through the dusty window, she glimpsed the scattered wooden buildings of Butte, Montana, a mining town perched against the mountains like a stubborn afterthought of civilization. "End of the line, miss," the driver called, already unloading her single trunk. Penelope stepped down, instantly aware of the curious stares from men lounging outside the mercantile. Her legs trembled from the 3-day journey, and her throat felt as dry as the Montana dust coating her traveling dress. "Excuse me," she said to the driver, her Irish accent immediately thickening with nervousness. "Could you tell me where I might find the Rusty Spur Saloon?" The driver's eyebrows shot up. "Saloon? That ain't no place for a lady like yourself. I have employment there. As a cook," she added hastily, seeing his expression. "My cousin arranged it." "Well then," he pointed down the main street, 3 buildings past the bank, "can't miss it. But mind yourself. But ain't exactly Dublin." Penelope nodded, though she'd never set foot in Dublin proper, having grown up in a tiny village in County Cork. She gathered her skirts and began walking, feeling the weight of stairs on her back. The letter from her cousin Mary had promised a fresh start, away from the famine-ravaged homeland that had already claimed most of her family. The cooking position wasn't glamorous, but it offered room and board and survival. The Rusty Spur lived up to its name, with an actual rusted spur hanging above the swinging doors. Penelope hesitated, then squared her shoulders and pushed through. Inside, the dim interior smelled of whiskey, tobacco, and unwashed bodies. A few early patrons hunched over their drinks while a heavy-set man wiped down the long bar. "I'm looking for Mr. Donovan," Penelope said, approaching the bar. "I'm Penelope Fletcher, Mary's cousin from Ireland." The man looked up, his expression unreadable. "Mary's cousin, eh? Expected you yesterday. The coach was delayed in Helena. Well, you're here now. I'm Patrick Donovan." He gestured toward a door behind the bar. "Kitchen's back there. You'll sleep upstairs, last room on the right. Mary said you can cook." "Yes, sir. Traditional Irish dishes, and I'm a quick learner for American fare," he grunted. "Good. We serve breakfast and dinner. Simple stuff: stew, beans, biscuits. You start tomorrow, 5 in the morning." Penelope nodded gratefully. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Donovan. Just don't cause trouble. Last girl couldn't take the miners' teasing and left after a week." A chill ran through Penelope. Teasing? Men get restless. They like to poke fun, especially at newcomers. His eyes narrowed. "Especially those who talk different." Before she could respond, the saloon doors swung open and a group of miners entered, their laughter booming through the room. Donovan nodded toward the back. "Go on up and get settled. Mary left some things for you." Penelope clutched her small bag and hurried through the kitchen and up the narrow staircase. The room was Spartan: a bed, a washstand, a small chest of drawers, and a window overlooking the alley behind the saloon. But it was clean, and on the bed lay a folded note and a simple calico dress. "Penny, welcome to America. Sorry I couldn't wait for you, but Samuel's offer of marriage couldn't wait. We've gone to California. The dress should fit." Donovan is fair if rough around the edges. Be strong. Mary. Penelope sank onto the bed, the weight of her situation crushing down. Mary had been her only connection in this foreign land, and now she was gone. Alone in a rough mining town, with nothing but her cooking skills and determination to see her through. Outside, she could hear the town coming to life as evening approached, piano music starting up, more voices in the saloon below. She unpacked her few belongings, changed into a fresh blouse, and splashed water on her face from the pitcher on the washstand. The mirror reflected a young woman with auburn hair escaping its pins, green eyes wide with uncertainty, and cheeks still bearing the faint freckles of home. "Be strong," she repeated to herself, Mary's words becoming her mantra. When Penelope descended to the kitchen to familiarize herself with her new workspace, she found it larger than expected, with a massive iron stove, well-used cookware, and surprisingly ample storage. A door led to a small garden where herbs and a few hardy vegetables grew. "Might as well see what I'm working with," she murmured, opening cupboards and bins. The supplies were basic but adequate: flour, beans, salt pork, coffee, potatoes. She was making mental notes when the kitchen door swung open. A woman in her 40s entered, her face lined but her eyes sharp. "So you're the Irish girl. I'm Edith. I help serve when it gets busy." Her gaze swept critically over Penelope. "Hope you last longer than the last one." "I intend to," Penelope replied, lifting her chin. "I've worked in kitchens since I was 12. "It ain't the cooking that breaks them," Edith said flatly. "It's the men. Miners work hard and play harder. They can be cruel to those they see as different. I'm not afraid of hard work or rough men. Good, because tomorrow's Saturday and this place will be packed from noon till midnight." Edith moved to leave, then paused. "Word of advice. That accent of yours, try to smooth it out. The boys will have a field day with it." After Edith left, Penelope slumped against the work table. All her life, her voice had tied her to home, to family, to identity. Now it marked her as an outsider, a target. She straightened her spine. If surviving meant adapting, then adapt she would. The next morning arrived too quickly, the darkness still complete when Penelope lit the kitchen lanterns at 4:30. She stoked the stove and set to work preparing biscuit dough and slicing salt pork. By 6, the aroma of coffee, frying meat, and fresh bread filled the air, and the first customers, mostly miners heading to early shifts, began trickling in. Penelope worked steadily, passing plates through the small window to Edith, who served the main room. She kept to the kitchen, grateful for the barrier between her and the curious stares. But as morning wore on, the inevitable moment arrived when Donovan pushed through the door. "Storeroom's running low on flour and sugar," he said. "Make a list of what you need. Sutton's wagon arrives this afternoon." Penelope nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "I will. Is there anything specific you'd like me to prepare for dinner?" "Beef stew. Miners like it hearty." He turned to go, then added, "You'll need to come out front to give the list to Sutton yourself. I'll be busy with a poker game." The thought made her stomach tighten, but she nodded again. "I understand." By midday, the saloon had filled with miners ending their shifts and townspeople seeking a hot meal. Penelope lost herself in the rhythm of cooking, finding unexpected comfort in the familiar tasks despite the unfamiliar ingredients. The stew simmered richly, biscuits turned golden, and even Edith gave a grudging nod of approval as she collected loaded plates. "Donovan says Sutton's here," Edith announced, poking her head into the kitchen around 3 o'clock. "Better take your list out front." Penelope removed her apron, smoothed her hair, and practiced her carefully modulated speech under her breath. "I need flour, sugar, and salt," she whispered, deliberately flattening her vowels. Then, gathering her courage, She pushed through the swinging door into the main room. The noise hit her first dozens of conversations, punctuated by laughter, the clinking of glasses, and someone plinking experimentally on a piano in the corner. The room fell quieter as heads turned toward her. Heat rushed to her face as she made her way to the bar where Donovan stood talking to a tall, broad-shouldered man in dusty trail clothes. "Mr. Donovan," she said carefully, "the list you requested." Donovan turned. "Ah, Sutton, this is our new cook, Miss Fletcher. She'll be handling the ordering from now on." Victor Sutton turned toward her, and Penelope found herself looking up into the most arresting pair of blue eyes she'd ever seen. They were startling against his sun-darkened skin and beneath the brim of his weathered hat. His face was all angles, sharp cheekbones, straight nose, and a jawline shadowed with dark stubble. "Miss Fletcher," he said, his voice a low rumble that somehow cut through the surrounding noise. "Mr. Sutton," she replied, extending the list. "These are the items we require." A smile touched his mouth. "We require," he repeated softly, as if tasting the words. "From the old country, I take it." Penelope stiffened, waiting for the mockery to begin. "Ireland, yes." Before Sutton could respond, a voice called out from a nearby table. "Hey, Irish. Say something else so we can hear that funny talk." Laughter rippled through the room. Penelope felt the color drain from her face, but she kept her expression neutral. "Ignore Jackson," Sutton said quietly. "He's had more whiskey than sense. Say top of the morning." Another voice shouted, followed by more laughter. Penelope turned to leave, but a hand caught her arm, not roughly but firmly. "Let them have their fun, boys," Sutton called out, his voice carrying easily across the room. "But remember, this lady's cooking your dinners now. Might want to consider that before you make her regret coming to Butte." The laughter subsided somewhat, though Penelope could still feel the stares. Sutton released her arm and looked at the list. "I can have this delivered by tomorrow noon. Anything else you need, Miss Fletcher?" "That will be all, thank you," she replied, her carefully practiced words coming out more clipped than intended. "Thank you for the list," he said, and something in his tone made her look up again. His expression held no mockery, only a curious intensity. "I look forward to trying your cooking." With that, he tipped his hat and headed for the door. Penelope hurried back to the kitchen, her arm still warm where he'd touched it, her cheeks burning with a mixture of humiliation and something she couldn't quite name. As the evening progressed, the saloon grew rowdier. Twice, Edith came into the kitchen, her face tight with annoyance. "They keep asking when the Irish cook is coming out," she reported. "Donovan says to stay put. They'll lose interest eventually." But when the dinner rush finally ended and Penelope was cleaning up, the kitchen door swung open to admit not Edith, but a young miner with a flushed face and overbright eyes. "There she is," he announced, as if he'd discovered a rare creature. "Come on out, Irish. The boys want to hear a song from the old country." Penelope gripped the edge of the work table. "I'm busy here, please leave. Don't be unfriendly now." He stepped closer, the smell of whiskey preceding him. "Just one little song, or tell us a story in that funny voice of yours." I said no. "Now please." The door opened again, and Victor Sutton filled the frame, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. "Thornton," he said, his voice deceptively calm, "I believe Miss Fletcher asked you to leave." The younger man spun around, momentarily thrown off balance. "Sutton. Just having a bit of fun." "Fun's over. Out." Something in Sutton's tone brooked no argument. The miner glanced between them, then shuffled out with a muttered curse. Sutton turned to Penelope, his eyes softening. "Are you all right, Miss Fletcher?" "Fine, thank you," she said stiffly, embarrassed at needing rescue twice in one day. "I could have handled it, no doubt." A smile touched his lips. "But I was heading this way regardless. Wanted to tell you that stew was the best I've had since leaving Tennessee." Despite herself, Penelope felt a small glow of pride. "Thank you. Your secret, rosemary and a bit of red wine, my mother's recipe." He nodded appreciatively. "Well, it's good, real good." He hesitated, then added, "Don't let them bother you about the way you talk. Most of them are too ignorant to appreciate it." "Appreciate it," she echoed, confused. "The way your words rise and fall, it's like—" He searched for the right comparison, like music almost. "Pleasant to the ear if you're listening right." Penelope stared at him, completely at a loss for words. No one had ever described her accent that way before. In Ireland, it had simply been the way everyone spoke. Here, it had become a liability, a source of ridicule. "But music? You're making fun," she said finally. Sutton shook his head, his eyes sincere. "I'm not. My grandmother came from Scotland. Used to love hearing her stories when I was a boy. Your voice reminds me a little of hers." Before Penelope could respond, Edith pushed through the door. "Donovan says to lock up the kitchen and get some rest. Tomorrow's another busy day." Sutton stepped back. "I should go. My deliveries come through twice a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays. If you need anything special, just put it on the list." "Thank you, Mr. Sutton," Penelope said, suddenly very aware of how alone they'd been in the kitchen. "Victor," he corrected gently. "Good night, Miss Fletcher." After he left, Edith gave Penelope a knowing look. "Better be careful there, girl. Victor Sutton's well-respected, but he's not the settling type. Runs supplies all through the territory, never stays in one place long." "I was just thanking him for his assistance," Penelope protested, feeling her face warm. Edith snorted. "Sure you were. Just mind yourself. Pretty Irish girl like you'll have plenty of attention, wanted or not." As Penelope climbed the stairs to her room that night, exhaustion weighed on her bones, but her mind remained strangely alert. The day had been a whirlwind of new experiences, some frightening, some promising. The mockery had stung, but she'd survived it. And then there was Victor Sutton, with his unexpected defense and even more unexpected compliment. Like music, she whispered to herself in the darkness of her room, testing the words. Could he have meant it? Or was it merely kindness to a newcomer? Either way, she had survived her first full day in Butte. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for tonight, that was enough. Days slipped into a week, and a routine emerged. Penelope rose before dawn, cooked through the morning and afternoon, then retired early to avoid the rowdiest evening crowds. The miners' interest in mocking her accent gradually waned as they discovered her talent for baking pies and corn bread. Donovan, while never warm, seemed satisfied with her work, especially as food sales increased. Every Tuesday and Saturday, Victor Sutton arrived with supplies, and Penelope found herself looking forward to those brief interactions. He always had a kind word, sometimes a story about his travels, and never once joined in when others teased her speech. One Tuesday morning in her third week, Penelope was elbow-deep in bread dough when Edith burst into the kitchen, eyes wide. "Trouble's coming. There's a stage full of fancy people from back east, some mining company executives and their wives. Donovan says they want a proper dinner tonight. Private room." Penelope wiped flour from her hands. "How many?" "8. And they expect civilized fare." Edith mimicked a high-pitched accent. "Whatever that means. I can do a roast if there's good beef to be had, potatoes, vegetables, maybe a custard for dessert. Donovan's already sent word to the butcher. But here's the thing, they want to meet the cook. Apparently, one of the wives fancies herself a culinary enthusiast." Penelope's stomach nodded. "I'll be busy in the kitchen. Surely they don't need—" "Donovan says you'll come out and accept their compliments after the meal. His words, not mine." Edith's expression softened slightly. "Look, just keep it brief. Nod, smile, say thank you kindly, and escape. The day passed in a flurry of preparation. The roast was seasoned and slow cooking, potatoes peeled, vegetables cleaned, and a rich custard cooling. Penelope took extra care with everything, knowing these were people accustomed to fine dining. Around 7, she heard the private dining room filling with voices cultured, Eastern accents discussing mining yields and railroad interests. By 8:30, the meal was served and, according to Edith, receiving enthusiastic praise. At 9, Donovan himself came to the kitchen. "They want to meet you," he said. "Best clean up a bit." Penelope removed her apron, smoothed her hair, and pinched color into her cheeks. Taking a deep breath, she followed Donovan to the private room. Inside, 4 well-dressed couples sat around a large table, the remains of her meal before them. Their conversation halted as she entered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Donovan announced, "our cook, Miss Fletcher." The oldest of the women, draped in silk and wearing more jewelry than Penelope had ever seen, spoke first. "My dear, that was the finest meal I've had since leaving Boston." "Absolutely delightful." "Thank you, madam," Penelope replied, consciously measuring her words. "I'm pleased it was to your liking." "Such an interesting accent," said another woman, younger and sharper-eyed. "Where are you from originally?" "Ireland, madam, County Cork." "How exotic!" exclaimed the first woman. "Do say something more. It's so charming." Penelope felt her face heat. Here it was again the request to perform, to be the curiosity for their entertainment. "I'm afraid I must return to the kitchen to prepare dessert," she said stiffly. "Oh, but you must tell us how you learned to cook so wonderfully," pressed the younger woman. "Did your people have a chef?" A short, balding man at the table chuckled. "Margaret, these Irish girls learn in their mothers' kitchens, not from French chefs. Isn't that right, girl? Say top of the morning for us." The room filled with polite laughter, and Penelope felt herself shrinking inside, even as she maintained her outward composure. These weren't crude miners but educated, wealthy people, and yet the mockery was the same, only wrapped in better manners. "If you'll excuse me," she managed, backing toward the door. "Now we've embarrassed her," said the first woman, though she was still smiling. "How sensitive these immigrant girls are." "I ain't never heard no Irish talk without saying begorra or me lad," said one of the men, attempting what he thought was an Irish brogue. "Go on, girl, give us a proper Irish saying." The door behind Penelope opened, and she nearly stumbled backwards into Victor Sutton. He steadied her with a hand at her elbow, then looked past her to the table of Eastern visitors. "Evening, folks," he said easily. "Donovan sent me to tell Miss Fletcher the custard needs her attention right away." "We were just getting acquainted with this delightful Irish creature," said the balding man. "Such an amusing accent." Victor's hand tightened slightly on Penelope's arm. "Miss Fletcher's cooking speaks for itself, I'd say. No need for additional entertainment." Something in his tone, not confrontational, but firm, silenced the table momentarily. Victor used the pause to guide Penelope out, closing the door behind them. In the hallway, Penelope drew a shaky breath. "Thank you, again." Victor's expression was troubled. "No need for thanks. Those types come through thinking they own everything and everyone because they've got money in Eastern banks." "They meant no real harm," Penelope said, though the words rang hollow even to her own ears. "Harm comes in many forms," Victor replied. "Sometimes from those who should know better." He studied her face. "You all right? Yes, I should check on the custard. I actually made that part up," he admitted with a small smile, "but I'll walk you back to the kitchen anyway." As they moved through the main room of the saloon, Penelope became aware of curious glances. Victor Sutton was well known and respected in Butte. To be seen in his company, with his hand still lightly at her elbow, would start tongues wagging. In the relative privacy of the kitchen, she turned to face him. "You've been very kind, Mr. Sutton. But I don't wish to be a burden requiring constant rescue." "Victor," he corrected again. "And you're no burden, Miss Fletcher. I just happen to dislike seeing people treated poorly for no good reason." "Penelope," she offered in return. "And while I appreciate the sentiment, I must learn to manage these situations myself." He nodded, his blue eyes thoughtful. "Fair enough. But here's a thought: maybe it's not you who needs to change. Maybe it's them who need to learn to listen better." With that surprisingly philosophical statement, he excused himself, leaving Penelope to ponder his words as she prepared the custard for serving. When Edith came to collect the dessert, her eyebrows were raised in silent question. "Not a word," Penelope warned. "Didn't say nothing," Edith replied innocently. "Just notice Sutton seems to turn up whenever you need a hand. Coincidence, if you say so." Edith picked up the tray of custards, "But coincidence or not, half the saloon saw him escort you from that room like you were a lady and not a cook." "Tongues are wagging already," Penelope sighed. The last thing she needed was gossip further complicating her position. "I'll speak with him next time he delivers supplies." But when Saturday arrived, Victor Sutton did not. Instead, his assistant, a gangly youth named Timothy, brought the usual goods. "Where's Mr. Sutton?" Penelope asked, trying to sound merely curious as she checked the flour delivery. "Headed north to Fort Benton," Timothy replied. "Big army order. He'll be gone a couple weeks, probably." "I see." Penelope ignored the unexpected pang of disappointment. "Well, thank you for the delivery." 2 weeks stretched into 3, and Penelope settled deeper into the routine of the rusty spur. The miners had largely accepted her presence, and if some still occasionally mocked her accent, she developed a thicker skin. Her cooking had gained a reputation throughout Butte, bringing in more business and earning her a small raise from Donovan. One evening, as she was preparing to retire, Edith knocked on her door with an unexpected message. "Letter came for you," she said, handing over a somewhat travel-worn envelope. "Been making the rounds. Postmark says Ireland." Penelope took it with trembling hands. News from home was rare and often tragic. She waited until Edith left before carefully opening the envelope. Inside was a letter from her childhood friend Siobhan, conveying mixed tidings: the death of an elderly neighbor, a cousin's new baby, the continued struggle with poor harvests. But the final paragraph made Penelope's heart race. "Your brother Michael has decided to join you in America. By the time this reaches you, he will likely be on his way. He says he will find you in Butte, Montana, where Mary said you'd gone. He's strong and determined, our Michael, but watch out for him. He's got your father's temper and none of your patience." Penelope sat heavily on her bed. Michael was coming here. Her younger brother, 19 now, if she calculated correctly, had been working on a neighboring farm when she left. He'd promised to care for their ailing mother, but the letter made no mention of her. Had she passed? The thought brought tears to Penelope's eyes. The next morning, she spoke to Donovan about the possibility of her brother arriving. "I don't need another mouth to feed," he said flatly. "He's a hard worker," Penelope assured him, "and he won't need feeding for free. He can find work in the mines or with the railroad." Donovan considered this. "He can stay 1 week. After that, he finds his own lodging or moves on." "Thank you, Mr. Donovan." The potential arrival of Michael added a new dimension to Penelope's days. She found herself watching the stagecoach arrivals, scanning faces for her brother's familiar features. 3 weeks passed with no sign of him, and she began to worry. Had something happened on the journey? Had he changed his mind? Then, on a crisp September morning, Penelope was shopping at the Mercantile when she heard a familiar voice calling her name, not her proper name, but the childhood nickname only family used. Penny. Is that really you, Penny? She turned to see a tall young man, his red hair unmistakable despite the new beard covering his jaw. Michael. They embraced right there in the street, heedless of curious onlookers. He was thinner than she remembered, but taller too, his boyish frame having filled out with a man's shoulders and strength. "Look at you," she said, slipping easily into their native dialect. "A proper man now. And you a proper American lady," he teased back in equally thick Irish. "Though I'd know that voice anywhere." They walked arm in arm toward the rusty spur, Michael carrying his single bag and talking rapidly about his journey. In the familiar cadence of their shared childhood speech, Penelope felt a homesickness she'd been suppressing for months. "And mother?" she finally asked quietly, Michael's face sobered. "Past last winter, peacefully in her sleep." Penelope nodded, having expected this news but feeling the grief nonetheless. "She's with father now. And watching us make our way in this new world." Michael looked around the dusty street of Butte with undisguised wonder. "So this is America, then? One small corner of it. Come, I've arranged for you to stay at the saloon for a week while you find work." As they approached the rusty spur, the stagecoach was just arriving from the north, and a familiar tall figure descended from atop it. Victor Sutton dusted off his trail clothes and adjusted his hat, then looked up to see Penelope and Michael approaching. His face brightened instantly. "Miss Fletcher, I was just coming to see if you needed any special orders." His gaze shifted curiously to Michael. "Mr. Sutton, this is my brother, Michael Fletcher, newly arrived from Ireland. Michael, this is Mr. Victor Sutton, who supplies the saloon." The two men sized each other up for a moment before shaking hands. "Good to meet family of Miss Fletcher's," Victor said. "You just arriving in Butte?" "Aye, straight from the boat in New York, more or less," Michael replied, his accent even thicker than Penelope's. "Looking for work now?" Victor nodded thoughtfully. "As it happens, I'm in need of help with my supply runs. Timothy's moving on to try his luck in the gold fields. Can you handle horses? Load wagons?" Michael straightened. "I worked our farm since I was 12. I can handle any beast or burden you've got." A smile touched Victor's mouth. "Well then, if your sister vouches for you, that's good enough for me. Job pays $30 a month plus room and board when we're on the trail. You interested?" The offer was more generous than either Fletcher had expected. Michael glanced at Penelope, who nodded encouragement. "I'd be much obliged, Mr. Sutton," Michael said formally. "Good. Get settled today, then meet me at the livery tomorrow morning, 7 sharp." Victor tipped his hat to Penelope. "Miss Fletcher, I'll come by later about those supplies." As Victor strode away, Michael nudged his sister. "That one's sweet on you, Penny. Don't be ridiculous," she said, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "He's just a kind man. Kind men don't look at a woman the way he looked at you. I may be fresh off the boat, but I'm not blind." Michael grinned. "And from the color in your cheeks, I'd say you're not entirely opposed to his attentions." "Hush," she scolded, but without heat. "Let's get you settled before you start marrying me off." The reunion with Michael brought a new lightness to Penelope's days. Knowing she had family nearby eased the loneliness that had been her constant companion. And with Michael working for Victor, she had more frequent and legitimate reasons to interact with the supply runner. October arrived with crisp mornings and golden aspen leaves on the mountainsides. But grew busier as miners rushed to complete outside work before winter set in. The saloon filled nightly, and Penelope's cooking became renowned enough that Donovan added her Irish stew to the regular menu, a fact that filled her with quiet pride. One Tuesday afternoon, as she was preparing dinner, Victor appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Special delivery," he announced, holding up a small package. Penelope wiped her hands on her apron. I don't recall ordering anything special. This isn't from my regular supplies. He stepped in, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I was up near Helena last week and found these. He handed her the package. Thought you might like them. Curious, Penelope unwrapped the brown paper to find several packets of seeds herbs she'd mentioned missing from her mother's garden. Thyme, marjoram, proper mint. For the kitchen garden, Victor explained. Michael mentioned you were trying to grow some herbs, but Donovan only had the basics. The thoughtfulness of the gift left her momentarily speechless. He'd not only remembered her casual comment about Irish herbs, but had gone out of his way to find them. Thank you, she finally managed. This is incredibly kind. It's nothing, he said, though his eyes suggested otherwise. Just thought your cooking might be even better with the right seasonings. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken words. Then the kitchen door swung open as Edith entered with an empty tray. Don't mind me, she said, a knowing smile playing at her lips. Just getting more biscuits. Victor cleared his throat. I should go. Need to check the wagon before tomorrow's run to Missoula. Is Michael going with you? Penelope asked. He is. Boy's a natural with the team, quick learner. Victor hesitated, then added, we'll be back in 3 days, maybe. Maybe when I return, you might consider taking a walk. Sunday afternoon, perhaps. If you can get away from the kitchen. The invitation, though tentatively offered, sent Penelope's heart racing. A public walk together would be a clear statement to the town about Victor's intentions toward her. I'd like that, she said simply. His smile transformed his face, erasing the weathered lines around his eyes. Sunday then, 2 o'clock. After he left, Edith approached with a smirk. Well now, a Sunday walk, that's practically a declaration. It's just a walk, Penelope protested, though she couldn't hide her smile. In this town, might as well announce your engagement. Edith chuckled. Not that I blame you. Victor Sutton's a good man, respected, and he clearly adores the way you talk, which is more than most around here. The days until Sunday passed with excruciating slowness. Penelope found herself paying more attention to her appearance, pinching color into her cheeks and arranging her hair with extra care. Michael returned from the Missoula run on Friday evening, full of stories about Victor's fair treatment and generosity on the trail. He asked all about our life in Ireland, Michael reported. Genuine interest, not mockery, and you should hear him defend your accent to others. 2 fellows in Missoula made some comment about that Irish cook, and he nearly took their heads off. This news warmed Penelope more than she cared to admit. It was one thing for Victor to be kind to her face, another entirely to defend her when she wasn't present. Sunday dawned clear and cool. Penelope finished her kitchen duties by 1, then hurried upstairs to change. She donned her best dress, a blue calico that Mary had left behind, altered to fit her smaller frame. She pinned her hair up in a modest but flattering style, and even dabbed a tiny bit of rosewater behind her ears, a luxury she'd purchased with her first extra wages. At precisely 2 o'clock, Victor arrived at the saloon's side entrance, looking transformed from his usual trail appearance. He wore a clean white shirt, dark vest, and his best jeans with his boots polished to a shine. He'd trimmed his beard and slicked back his dark hair. The effect was striking. Miss Fletcher, he greeted her, his voice warm. You look lovely. Thank you, Mr. Sutton, she replied, suddenly shy. You're quite handsome yourself. He offered his arm, and she took it, acutely aware of the solid strength beneath her fingers. As they strolled down Butte's Main Street, Penelope felt the curious stares of townsfolk. Victor Sutton courting the Irish cook was evidently noteworthy news. They walked to the small town park, where a few benches offered views of the surrounding mountains. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily, Victor telling stories of his travels, Penelope sharing memories of Ireland. He asked questions about her homeland, genuinely interested in her descriptions of green hills and misty mornings. "I've never left American soil," he admitted. "Furthest east I've been is Chicago, furthest west is Portland. Your Ireland sounds like something from a storybook." "Parts of it are beautiful beyond words," Penelope agreed. "But beauty doesn't fill empty stomachs. The famine took nearly everyone I knew." "I'm sorry," Victor said softly. "Loss seems to follow us all in different ways." He was quiet for a moment. "I lost my parents in a river crossing when I was 14. Wagon tipped, current was too strong. My grandmother raised me after that, but she passed 5 years ago." "So you've been alone since then," he nodded. "Made it easier to keep moving. No attachments, no reason to stay in one place." "And now?" Penelope asked, her heart quickening. Victor's blue eyes met hers directly. "Now I'm finding reasons to consider more permanent arrangements." Before she could respond to this significant statement, a voice called out from across the park. "Well, if it ain't Sutton and his Irish songbird." 3 miners approached, clearly having spent their Sunday drinking. Penelope recognized one as Jackson, who had mocked her on her first day at the saloon. "Afternoon, gentlemen," Victor said evenly, subtly shifting to place himself between Penelope and the men. "Taking the little shamrock for a walk, are you?" Jackson sneered. "Does she talk pretty for you, Sutton? Give you private performances of that musical accent?" Victor's posture tensed. "You're drunk, Jackson. Move along before you say something you'll regret." "Already regretting we let all these foreigners in," another miner chimed in. "Taking American jobs with their foreign ways." Penelope put a restraining hand on Victor's arm, feeling the muscles coiled with tension. "We should go," she murmured. "Listen to that," Jackson laughed. "Even when she's trying to sound American, it comes out all wrong. Say something Irish, girl. Top o' the morning to ye." His attempt at mimicry was crude and exaggerated. Victor took a step forward, his voice dangerously low. "That's enough." "Or what?" Jackson swayed slightly, emboldened by liquor and his companions. "You gonna fight over some Irish?" He never finished the sentence. Victor's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling. The other 2 miners rushed forward, but Victor was ready, landing another solid punch that dropped a second man. The third hesitated, then backed away, hands raised. "Easy, Sutton, just having some fun." "Find your fun elsewhere," Victor growled, breathing hard. "And tell everyone and but anyone who mocks Miss Fletcher answers to me." "Understood." The miner nodded rapidly, then helped his dazed companions to their feet. They retreated, muttering curses but making no further trouble. Victor turned to Penelope, his expression a mix of anger and concern. "I'm sorry about that. Are you all right?" She nodded, though her heart was racing. "You shouldn't have done that. They were just drunk and foolish." "No, they were being cruel." Victor flexed his hand, knuckles already swelling. "And I'm tired of hearing it. Your voice is beautiful, Penelope. The way you speak, it's like listening to a song no one else can sing." The sincerity in his eyes stole her breath. "You truly mean that?" "I've never meant anything more." He stepped closer. "From the first day I heard you speak, I was captivated. Not just by your courage in coming to a strange land alone, but by the music in your words even when you try to hide it." Penelope felt tears threatening. No one had ever described her accent, the very thing that marked her as foreign, as other, with such appreciation. "You make me want to stop hiding it," she admitted softly. "Good," he said, reaching up to gently brush a strand of hair from her face. "Because I'd listen to you speak all day if I could." The moment hung between them, charged with possibility. Then, with exquisite gentleness, Victor leaned down and kissed her. His lips were warm and sure against hers, his hand coming up to cradle her cheek. Penelope responded instinctively, her fingers curling into the fabric of his vest. When they parted, both a little breathless, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since you handed me that first supply list." Penelope laughed softly. "And I've been wanting you to." Their walk back to the saloon drew even more stares, but neither cared. Something fundamental had shifted between them, a declaration made in actions if not yet in words. At the side entrance, Victor took both her hands in his. "May I call on you properly? Court you as you deserve?" "Yes," she replied simply, her accent flowing freely now, musical and unrestrained. His smile was brilliant. "I love how you say that word." After Victor left, Penelope floated through her evening duties in a happy daze. The encounter with the miners seemed trivial compared to the joy expanding in her chest. When Michael found her in the kitchen later, he took one look at her face and grinned. "Well, that answers my question about how your walk went." "He kissed me," Penelope confessed, unable to keep the news to herself. "And punched Jackson Sullivan, from what I hear," Michael added. "News travels fast. Half the town's talking about how Victor Sutton defended your honor," Penelope sighed. "I wish it hadn't come to violence." "Some men only understand a fist to the jaw," Michael said pragmatically, "and it sends a message. No one will mock your accent so freely now that they know Victor's serious about you." "Is he?" Penelope couldn't keep the hopeful note from her voice. Michael laughed. "Sister, when a man fights for a woman in public, then kisses her for all to see, his intentions are clear. The only question is when he'll propose, not if." The following week seemed charmed. Victor called on Penelope regularly, taking her for walks when weather permitted or sitting with her in the saloon's quieter afternoon hours. He brought small gifts, a ribbon for her hair, a book of poetry, once even a small silver brooch from Helena. Each time he returned from his supply runs, he sought her out first thing, as if to reassure himself she was still there. For her part, Penelope blossomed under his attention. She no longer tried to hide her accent, and though some still occasionally mimicked her, the mockery had lost its sting. Victor's appreciation of her voice had transformed her greatest insecurity into something to be cherished. November brought the first serious snow, and with it, preparations for Thanksgiving, a holiday Penelope had never celebrated in Ireland. Donovan, seeing an opportunity for business, planned a special dinner at the saloon. "Traditional American fare," he instructed Penelope. "Turkey, stuffing, pumpkin pie, the works." "I'll need help," she said. "More than just Edith. Already arranged for 2 girls from town to assist, and charge double the usual for dinner plates. Folks will pay for a proper holiday meal." The preparations kept Penelope busy from dawn until well after dusk in the days leading up to the holiday. Victor and Michael were on an extended run to Fort Benton. Delivering winter supplies before the mountain passes became too treacherous. Their absence left Penelope with a hollow feeling, despite the bustling kitchen. 2 days before Thanksgiving, a fierce storm blew in from the north, bringing howling winds and heavy snow. By nightfall, Butte was buried under nearly 2 feet of the white powder, with more falling steadily. Penelope stood at her bedroom window, watching the swirling flakes and worrying about the men on the trail. "They're experienced," Edith reassured her at breakfast. "Victor knows these mountains better than anyone. They'll hole up somewhere safe until it passes." But as the storm continued through the next day, Penelope's anxiety grew. When Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and blindingly white, there was still no sign of the supply wagon. The kitchen work provided some distraction, but every time the saloon door opened, Penelope looked up expectantly. By 4 o'clock, The rusty spur was filled with townspeople eager for the special dinner. Donovan had cleared the main room to accommodate more tables, and the aroma of roast turkey and spiced pumpkin filled the air. Penelope moved mechanically through her duties, her mind far away on snowy mountain trails. Just as she was preparing to serve the first round of plates, the kitchen door burst open, admitting a blast of cold air and Michael, his coat crusted with snow, his face red from the cold. "Michael." Penelope dropped the ladle she was holding and rushed to embrace him. "Thank God you're safe. Where's Victor?" "At the doctor's," Michael said grimly. "Wagon slid off a narrow pass 2 days ago. Victor's leg got caught under it when we tried to right it." Penelope's hand flew to her mouth. He'll live," Michael assured her quickly. "Broken leg, some frostbite. We managed to free him and make it to a lined shack for the worst of the storm. Got back to town an hour ago." Without hesitation, Penelope untied her apron. "Edith," she called, "can you manage? I need to go." Edith appeared in the doorway, took one look at the situation, and nodded. "Go. We'll handle things here." Donovan began to protest, but Penelope was already grabbing her coat, heedless of his objections. She followed Michael through the snow-filled streets to the doctor's small office near the center of town. Inside, the waiting room was empty except for an elderly man dozing in a corner chair. Dr. Sullivan emerged from the back room, looking tired but not grave. "Miss Fletcher," he greeted her. "I suspected you'd be along shortly." "How is he?" Penelope asked, her accent thick with worry. "Stubborn as a mule," the doctor replied with a hint of a smile. "Legs broken clean, should heal well with proper rest. Some frostbite on his hands and face, but nothing severe. He's lucky your brother was with him. Another night out there alone." He let the sentence hang ominously. "May I see him?" The doctor nodded. "He's been asking for you, through there, first door on the right." Penelope hesitated at the doorway, then stepped into the small recovery room. Victor lay on a narrow bed, his left leg elevated and heavily bandaged. His face was pale beneath his tan, with red patches on his cheeks and nose from frostbite. But his eyes, those blue eyes that had looked at her with such admiration, lit up when she entered. "Penelope," he said, his voice hoarse but strong, "you're missing your big dinner." "Hardly important," she replied, moving to his bedside and taking his bandaged hand gently in hers. "What were you thinking, traveling in such weather, thinking I wanted to be back for Thanksgiving, to see you?" He attempted a smile that turned into a wince. "Not my brightest idea. You could have been killed," she said, tears threatening. "Would have been if not for your brother. Boy's got a cool head in a crisis." Victor squeezed her hand weakly. "I'm sorry to worry you." Penelope brushed away a tear. "Just concentrate on healing. The doctor says your leg will mend with rest. And who'll run my supply routes while I'm laid up?" Victor sighed. "I've built that business over 7 years. Can't lose it now." "Michael can handle the local deliveries," Penelope suggested. "And perhaps hire temporary help for the longer runs." Victor looked at her thoughtfully. "You've got a good head for business, you know that. Most women would just tell me to rest and not worry about work." "I'm not most women," she reminded him. "And I understand what it means to build something from nothing." He nodded slowly. "That you do." Then, with unexpected earnestness, he added, "Marry me, Penelope." The abruptness of the proposal took her breath away. "What, marry me?" he repeated. "I know this isn't the romantic setting I planned. I have a ring in my saddlebag that I picked up in Fort Benton. Was going to ask you proper on Christmas Eve. But lying here, thinking I might not make it back to you, it clarified things." His eyes held hers intently. "I love you. Your strength, your kindness, the music in your voice. Marry me and make that music part of my life every day." Tears spilled freely down Penelope's cheeks now. "Yes," she said, her accent flowing rich and unrestrained. "Yes, I will marry you, Victor Sutton." He pulled her down for a kiss, wincing slightly as the movement jostled his injured leg but not letting that deter him. When they parted, both were smiling through tears. "Christmas," he said. "I'll be well enough to stand by Christmas. We can marry then." "Christmas," she agreed. "Though you won't be standing long with that leg." "Long enough to say my vows," he promised. News of their engagement spread through but faster than the Thanksgiving dinner was served. By the following day, well-wishers were stopping by the doctor's office to congratulate Victor and dropping by the saloon kitchen to express good wishes to Penelope. Even Donovan, after his initial annoyance at her abrupt departure, offered gruff congratulations. "Suppose you'll be leaving us once you're married," he said. "Not immediately," Penelope assured him. "Victor will need time to heal, and I wouldn't leave you without a replacement. HMPH, won't be easy to replace your cooking." This, from Donovan, was high praise indeed. Victor was moved from the doctor's office to his small house on the outskirts of town after a week of recovery. The modest two-bedroom structure was sparsely furnished but solid and well-built. Michael helped transport him, and Penelope visited daily, bringing meals and tending to his needs. "It's a good house," she commented one afternoon as she changed the bandages on his leg. "Needs a woman's touch but strong bones." "Like its owner," Victor suggested with a smile. "Exactly like its owner." She finished wrapping his leg and sat beside him on the bed. "Strong, reliable, and currently in need of care." He took her hand, his expression turning serious. "I've been thinking about the future, Penelope, my business. You're worried about the supply routes." "Yes, but also thinking bigger. Butte's growing. The mines are bringing more people every month. What this town needs is a proper mercantile, not just supplies delivered, but a permanent store where folks can get what they need year-round." Penelope considered this. "Like Mr. Jensen's place, but larger. Much larger. Clothing, housewares, tools, quality food items." His eyes lit with enthusiasm. "I've saved a good bit over the years, enough for a down payment on a proper storefront on Main Street. You'd stay in one place." This was significant given his previous wandering lifestyle. Victor nodded. "For the right reasons. For a home. A family." He squeezed her hand. "For you." The weeks leading up to Christmas passed in a flurry of preparation. Victor's leg healed steadily, though the doctor warned he would always have a slight limp in cold weather. Michael took over the essential supply runs with remarkable efficiency, earning praise from Victor's regular customers. Penelope divided her time between the saloon kitchen and planning for the wedding. The ceremony would be small, neither had much family to invite, but meaningful. Reverend Thomas agreed to perform the service on Christmas Eve, and Edith helped Penelope alter a blue silk dress that one of the Eastern mining executives' wives had surprisingly donated upon hearing of the engagement. "She said blue suits me better than her," Penelope explained as Edith pinned the hem, "and that she was touched by our frontier romance, as she called it." "Folks do love a good love story," Edith remarked. "Especially one where the heroic supplier rescues the Irish cook from mockery and marries her on Christmas." Penelope laughed. "When you put it that way, it does sound like something from a dime novel." Christmas Eve arrived with perfect weather, crisp, clear, and just enough snow on the ground to make everything look like a scene from a picture book. The small church was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbon, and lanterns cast a warm glow over the simple wooden pews. Victor stood at the altar with Michael beside him as best man, his weight supported by a cane but his posture straight and proud. When Penelope appeared at the back of the church, a collective murmur of appreciation rose from the gathered townsfolk. She walked slowly down the aisle, her auburn hair arranged in elegant curls beneath a lace veil borrowed from Mrs. Sullivan, the doctor's wife. The blue silk dress highlighted her slender figure and brought out the color of her eyes. In her hands, she carried a small bouquet of winter greenery and dried flowers. As she reached Victor's side, he whispered, "You're beautiful, mockery." Penelope's eyes widened at the Irish endearment, "my heart," pronounced perfectly in her native tongue. "Michael's been teaching me," Victor explained with a smile. "Thought I should learn the language of your heart." The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When it came time for their vows, Victor spoke clearly, his deep voice carrying to the back of the church. Penelope's response was melodic, her Irish accent flowing freely, no longer something to hide but something to celebrate the music that had first captured Victor's heart. "By the power vested in me," Reverend Thomas concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Victor pulled Penelope close, his kiss a promise of all the years to come. The church erupted in applause and cheers, led enthusiastically by Michael from his position beside them. The reception was held at the Rusty Spur, which Donovan had closed to regular business for the evening. Penelope had overseen the preparation of a feast that blended American and Irish traditions, roast beef and potatoes, alongside traditional soda bread and colcannon. Even Donovan seemed impressed, though he tried to hide it. As the celebration wound down, Victor and Penelope stood by the door, accepting congratulations from departing guests. Dr. Sullivan, the last to leave, paused to shake Victor's hand. "That leg's healing well," he observed, "but I still recommend no travel for at least another month." "No travel planned," Victor assured him, "except the short ride home tonight." He glanced at Penelope, his eyes warm with promise. After everyone had gone, Michael helped them into Victor's wagon, which he had decorated with pine boughs and ribbon. "I'll be staying in town tonight," he said with a wink. "Give you two some privacy." The ride to Victor's, now their house, was peaceful, the night still and bright with stars. Victor kept his arm around Penelope, drawing her close against the cold. "Happy, Mrs. Sutton?" he asked softly. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. Inside the house, Victor had prepared a surprise. The formerly sparse main room now held new curtains, a colorful rag rug, and a comfortable rocking chair near the fireplace. "When did you do all this?" Penelope asked, amazed. "Had help from some of the ladies in town, wanted it to feel like a home for you." He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Our home." She turned in his embrace. "It's perfect." Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Victor traced gentle patterns on Penelope's bare shoulder. "Tell me about Ireland," he murmured. "Tell me in your own words, with your own voice." And so she did, letting the accent she had once tried so hard to suppress flow freely, as she described the green hills of her childhood, the misty mornings, the wild Atlantic coast. Victor listened, entranced, occasionally asking questions or requesting she repeat certain phrases just to hear the music of her words. "One day," he said when she finally fell silent, "I want to see it with you, when the mercantile is established and we can afford the journey. I want to walk those green hills and hear everyone speaking the way you do." Penelope smiled in the darkness. "I would like that. Though Ireland will always be where I was born, this is home now." She placed her hand over his heart. "You are home." Spring came to Butte with its customary fits and starts, warm days followed by late snowstorms, then sudden thaws that turned the streets to mud. By April, Victor's leg had healed enough that he could walk without the cane most days, though the promised limp remained. True to his word, he had secured a storefront on Main Street and begun renovations for Sutton's mercantile. Penelope had given notice at the Rusty Spur, helping Donovan train a replacement cook, while spending her free time ordering stock and planning displays for the new store. Michael had taken over the supply routes permanently, expanding the business to include regular runs to the smaller mining camps in the surrounding mountains. He had also, to everyone's amusement, begun courting Edith's niece, a lively girl of 20 who seemed entirely enchanted by his Irish charm. On a particularly fine May morning, Penelope stood in the nearly completed mercantile, arranging a display of imported tea and coffee. Victor was at the bank, finalizing details for their grand opening the following week. The bell over the door jingled and she looked up, expecting to see her husband. Instead, 3 women entered, wives of prominent businessmen in town, including Mrs. Sullivan, the doctor's wife who had loaned Penelope her veil. "Good morning, ladies," Penelope greeted them, no longer self-conscious about her accent. "We're not officially open yet, but you're welcome to look around." "Actually, we came to see you," Mrs. Sullivan said warmly. "The Ladies' Aid Society is organizing a fundraiser for the new schoolhouse, and we wondered if you might consider joining our committee." Penelope blinked in surprise. The Ladies' Aid Society was composed of Butte's most prominent women, certainly not a group she had ever expected to invite her membership. "Me?" she asked, unable to hide her astonishment. "You've become quite respected in town," explained another of the women. "And your organization skills are evident in how quickly this mercantile has come together. Not to mention," added the third woman with a smile, "we could use some of those delicious Irish recipes of yours for the fundraising luncheon." Penelope felt a warmth spreading through her chest, not just acceptance, but appreciation. "I would be honored," she said, her accent flowing musically. "When is your next meeting?" After the ladies left, Penelope stood for a long moment in the center of the store, her store, their store. From Irish immigrant mocked for her accent to respected businesswoman and member of the Ladies' Aid Society in less than a year. The journey seemed almost unbelievable. The bell jingled again, and this time it was Victor who entered, his face alight with excitement. "It's all set," he announced. "Bank approved the final loan. We open next Wednesday." Penelope flew into his arms, laughing. "We did it." He held her tight, then pulled back to look into her face. "You did it, mockery. Your strength made this possible." "Our strength," she corrected gently. "Together." Victor kissed her, then rested his forehead against hers. "I have one more piece of news," he said softly. "What's that?" Dr. Sullivan confirmed it this morning. "Come November, we'll need to add a cradle to our home." Penelope's hands flew to her still flat stomach, her eyes wide. "A baby." "We're having a baby," Victor nodded, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "A little one who'll grow up hearing the music in their mother's voice every day." Tears of joy spilled down Penelope's cheeks as she threw her arms around her husband's neck. "I love you, Victor Sutton." "And I love you, Penelope Sutton," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Every word you speak, every dream you dream, every moment you share with me." Outside the large front window of Sutton's mercantile, the streets of Butte bustled with activity, miners heading to their shifts, ladies shopping, children playing. Inside, Penelope and Victor held each other, surrounded by the future they were building together. The girl who had once been mocked for her accent had found not just acceptance, but love, a love born from the very thing that had set her apart. And the cowboy who had heard music in her words would listen to that sweet melody for all the days of their lives. On a crisp November morning 6 months later, Penelope gave birth to twins, a boy they named James Michael, and a girl they called Eliza Mary. Victor, pacing anxiously outside the bedroom during the delivery, burst into tears when Dr. Sullivan announced the double blessing. 2. He kept repeating, dazed with joy and exhaustion. "We have two." When he was finally allowed to enter the bedroom, he found Penelope propped up against the pillows, a tiny bundle cradled in each arm. Her face was pale but radiant, her auburn hair tumbled around her shoulders. "Come meet your children," she said softly, her Irish lilt more pronounced in her exhaustion. Victor approached the bed with reverence, sitting carefully beside his wife and children. "They're perfect," he whispered, gently touching each tiny face, "just like their mother." The mercantile thrived, becoming the heart of Butte's commercial district. Victor's fair prices and Penelope's warm customer service made it the preferred shopping destination for both townspeople and visitors. They expanded twice in the first 5 years, adding a second floor with a dedicated section for quality fabrics and ready-made clothing. Michael married Edith's niece Sarah in the summer following the twins' birth, and they built a house next door to Victor and Penelope. He continued running the supply business, while Sarah opened a millinery shop that quickly became popular with the ladies of Butte. The twins grew into sturdy, bright children with their father's blue eyes and their mother's auburn hair. From their earliest days, they were lulled to sleep by their mother's Irish lullabies, and their father's deep voice reciting the poetry he had come to love. James showed an early aptitude for numbers and helped in the store from the time he could count, while Eliza inherited her mother's kitchen skills and began creating her own recipes by age 9. Both children spoke with a unique blend of their mother's Irish lilt and their father's Western drawl, a sound that became uniquely theirs. On the twins' 5th birthday, Victor surprised the family with tickets to Ireland. "Time to see where your mother comes from," he announced over the birthday cake, "and meet what family remains." The journey was everything Penelope had dreamed, showing Victor and the children the green hills of County Cork, the stone cottage where she had grown up, introducing them to distant cousins who welcomed them with open arms. Victor listened, enthralled, as Penelope spoke freely in her native dialect with the locals, the music of her homeland flowing through her words. "Now I understand," he said one evening as they watched the sun set over the Atlantic. "This land shaped your voice, just as Montana shaped mine." "And our children will have both," Penelope replied, leaning into his embrace. When they returned to Butte, they brought back treasures, Irish woolens for the store, authentic recipes for Penelope's growing collection, and stories that would become family lore for generations to come. As the years passed, the town of Butte grew and changed. The copper mines expanded, bringing more prosperity and more people. The little mining camp transformed into a proper city with paved streets, electric lights, and even a streetcar system. Through it all, Sutton's mercantile remained a constant, adapting to new times while maintaining the personal touch that had made it successful. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Victor and Penelope hosted a celebration that brought together the entire community. The twins, now young adults with futures of their own, unfolding, James preparing to study engineering at a university back east. Eliza, engaged to the son of the town's banker, helped organize the event. In the private moment before their guests arrived, Victor took Penelope's hands in his hair now streaked with silver but his blue eyes as bright as ever. 20 years, he marveled. 20 years of hearing the music in your voice every day. And never once growing tired of it, she teased, her own accent still melodious after all these years in America. Never, he affirmed seriously. It remains the most beautiful sound I know. Penelope touched his face tenderly. Do you remember that day in the saloon kitchen when you said my accent was like music? I remember everything about that day, Victor replied. The way you looked at me like I was mad. The way your eyes lit up when you realized I meant it. No one had ever heard beauty in it before, she said softly. Only strangeness, difference, their loss. Victor pulled her close. 20 more years, at least. At least, Penelope agreed, stretching up to kiss her husband as the first guests began to arrive, their voices adding to the harmony of the life they had built together, a life where difference became strength, and what set them apart ultimately brought them together. And in the years that followed, as Butte continued to grow and change, as their children built lives of their own and grandchildren gathered at their knees, Penelope's voice remained a constant, the Irish lilt that had once made her an outsider now woven indelibly into the fabric of their family, their business, their community. The accent that had been mocked became a legacy, passed down through generations in phrases and cadences, stories and songs. For Victor Sutton had been right all those years ago. There was music in Penelope's words, a melody of courage, of crossing oceans and building new lives, of finding love in unexpected places. And that music, like all true harmonies, only grew richer and more beautiful with time.